Hello, and welcome everyone to Star Trek Discovery Pod. Oh wait, we usually start with a star date, don't we?
We do start with the
Mariah,
star date.
I'm dropping the ball already. Star date 47,632.44. Welcome to Star Trek
34.44, but that's fine.
34.44. I can read. Welcome to Star Trek Discovery Pod, a podcast that will challenge you to a duel of the mind. We are your witnesses for the evening. I am Ensign Grant Davis, and with me on the view screen is
Just Mariah Gossett this evening.
That's just it. It's just us two.
That's just us. That's it.
Mike and Clyde are suspended over some eel tanks, and they're unavailable for the night, as we bear witness. And we give them a rager of a party here.
We're going to have a great party.
This week we are covering the 8th episode of Star Trek Lower Decks, Veritas?
Veritas. You got it. It's
Veritas.
Latin.
Okay. But before we dive into that, Mariah, can you tell our listeners / viewers how they can support the pod?
Absolutely. So there are a couple of ways you can help us out this evening. One is just listening to and subscribing to the podcast itself. So you can do that on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube. Make sure you click that notification bell if you're with us on YouTube so that you know whenever we're going live. You can also visit us at StarTrekPod.co to find all the places you can listen to or watch this podcast. And if you like the content that we create, you can get even more content from us over on Patreon. So that's patreon.com/StarTrekPod. There we put out special series where we're covering some old Trek. We cover some movies. Also, the watch-along parties in our Slack, which you can join for just $2 an episode, are excellent and amazing. And I love our Slack group. They're the best humans in the whole wide world. So you definitely want to join up with the best humans because they're the best humans.
Yeah, that's kind of the way it goes, guys.
You know. Also, if you are joining us live tonight in the chat, wherever you are watching us, if you just type the word POD in all caps, we'll make sure to try to see that comment and we can talk about it at some point in the show because it's also just Grant and I. So we're really relying on you for some help this evening.
It's a bit of a skeleton crew. Yeah. So please, throughout the episode, just let us know your thoughts. We can look right over here and see what you guys are thinking. That said, like we said, we are talking about episode 8, Veritas, which was written by Garrick Bernard. He worked on Solar Opposites, and it was directed by Kim Arndt from Big Mouth and also Solar Opposites. Man, I feel like I never watched Solar Opposites, and that's like the show to watch because a lot of the people are drawing from that show right over to here. This makes it Kim's 3rd episode directing of Lower Decks.
Yeah.
Big congrats there. So I think it's time for us to get our horns of Candor out, and we're going to talk about this. Are you ready? You ready, Mariah?
I'm ready.
You ready for some hot freaks?
Hot freaks! Did I do it? I think I did it.
I'll let you kick things off.
Yeah, I actually really liked this episode a lot. I appreciated that we finally got a little bit of a change of structure instead of just having 2 team-ups where they go off on their individual adventures. We got to see everybody all together. I also thought we got to see much more plotline, specifically from Rutherford and Tendi, which is something that I have been wanting. And I really enjoyed both of their little moments in this particular episode. I also think Star Trek has such a rich history of being able to sort of play and bend genre all the time. So we get, Western episodes, we get the murder mystery episodes, we get straight up sci-fi. And then in this take, we are getting the courtroom drama, which is super fun and a cool way to sort of break up this sort of office comedy that we've been having all season. So I think it's really smart. Also, this may be, I feel like I say this every week and they top it every week. There are so many references in this episode. It is just chock full. So I'm really excited to sort of dig into them. I mean, even from our very first cold open, we're already slung right into undiscovered country. And like feeling like Bones and Kirk are about to go up for their court date with the Klingons. So I thought
I
all the
got that
references.
reference.
Yay!
I saw that one.
I got it. I got it.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall, I really enjoyed this episode. I thought the twist at the end was fun and like kind of a smart way to poke fun at the fact that almost all major Star Trek mystery episodes, there are lots of just glaring plot holes that we all just sort of choose to ignore and enjoy the plot of the day. So,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I thought this episode was a lot of fun. The format, the structure of this, having it break apart the our four main characters into their four varying adventures and perspectives as a story structure. I thought I always like when they do that, as long as it's not overdone in a show. It's always this special gem when that kind of story structure takes place. And you're dead on that this episode, I thought, finally did a lot to kind of flesh out the characters of Tendi and more so Rutherford. The like Rutherford having this special ability that when he goes dark, he becomes a super soldier, like a dangerous super soldier, is hilarious, especially to the effect that like he's so gentle and mild mannered otherwise, and like he's a force to be reckoned with if he's not in control of his body. Um, it's fascinating, and I like to see them play more with that. And overall, I mean, they obviously were were being a bit tongue in cheek at the end about the whole like, oh no, this is just a party, when their own our own characters are constantly pointing out this is really ridiculous. This is really ridiculous. This is really ridiculous. No, this was not just some party. You guys are full of it. Um, and you know, as long as you kind of take that with a grain of salt, I thought that everything else in this was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I agree. I thought it was a really fun episode overall, and I'm excited to sort of dig into all of these individual plot points for each character. And then I think Grant and I are going to play a little game later. So
Yes.
y'all start thinking about which of these characters would you want to hang out with and why. So I'll let y'all think about that in our
Mm.
live audience. Let Grant think about that, and then we'll play this game a little bit later.
But I think let's go ahead and jump into it. I guess we could start with the cold open. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, it was for sure that very like undiscovered country, Klingon trial sort of vibe right at the beginning. They're just tossed in this jail cell, and Mariner is quick to point out, like, hey, it could be worse. I've been in worse. This is at least like a semi nice place. And then they start shooting up to the top, and then we cut to the credits. And so, I think we've gotten used to there being a bit of a joke at the beginning in the cold open, but this we
Right.
just like ran straight in and started digging into the plot.
It almost didn't feel like a cold open, right?
Right.
Like it didn't feel like its own standalone. It just felt like we're moving into the story, and we are obviously just dropped into it. We're supposed to be as confused as them, the characters, I think, intentionally. So we don't know what's going on. We have to figure it out as it goes along. But it was weird. It was a weirder, uncharacteristic cold open for the episode, and I didn't know the aliens. I assumed they were Klingons, and then kind of I think right up front, someone says something to the effect of "it's not Klingons," and I was like, okay, well, whatever they are, I still don't know what they were. what
Yeah,
alien
I
this was.
did. So Clark Clack is the main character we're sort of talking with, and they are on. I tried to look up the planet. It's not a planet we have encountered before this show, so this is a new sort of a new planet, a new alien race for us to encounter
Right.
so far as the
Um,
show.
Chupi says this makes fun of the trope that aliens do things the way we do things. Alien species always have trials like we do in ancient Europe and in a rotunda or whatever
Mm-hmm.
with people up on these little platforms looking down on you. Yeah, I mean, I think it's funny that oh no, this is just our really fancy party room.
Yeah,
Like no, it's not.
it was great.
Um, so the structure of this is that we're gonna get slices of what is ultimately the story that led to the circumstances we're in, and it goes based on character perspective. So would it be best that we break this down by character?
I'm thinking so. Yeah, like we can go in the order that they sort of pontificate their case.
Okay.
So we start with Mariner. And it was so funny because to me they almost all gave small cold opens within each character because we start with Mariner arguing with Boimler about who is the better ultimate villain. So we hear them talking about Khan versus Rogo Danar, who is a
Who?
it's a deep reference, like
Oh, is it? Okay.
it's a deep TNG reference, and so we're definitely going to have to get some perspective on this particular, I think, argument when Clyde and Mike are back next week because I'd love to hear their thoughts on it. I have not watched the particular episode that he's in a very long time, but essentially his character, sort of outsmarts Picard for a short amount of time. And then we get Khan, which I know you are familiar with from the movies that we have watched for the Patreon pod.
The guy with the pecs and the fur.
Yes,
Yeah.
and Tendi makes a joke about his huge chest, which apparently was a reference to. There were rumors at the time of the filming of the movie that Ricardo Montalbanc's chest was like a fake chest piece.
The prosthetic.
Yeah, but the director had, came forward and was like, no, that was all him. Like that was all his body, yada yada.
That's legit hit the dude's chest. Okay.
So yeah, I thought that was like a funny little quick reference there. And then we figure out it's a red alert. They need to get to their stations. Boimler is so embarrassed because they're supposed to be on the bridge. And Mariner's like, don't worry, we got this. You just got to be sly and agree with whatever the captain has to say. But of course, Boimler is really bad at even doing that.
When they were talking about, what's this dude's name? I wrote it down. Roga Dinar. Does Mariner straight up say, get the fuck out of my face"?
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know if it was bleeped out, if it was get the beep out of my face, or if she straight up dropped the F-bomb on the show. Get the fuck out of my face with that.
Oh, now I don't remember if they bleeped it or not.
Hey,
I think they bleeped it.
If you're in the chat, let us know. Did they bleep it? Or, because I only listened to it once, and I was like, whoa, did she actually just straight up say, get the fuck out of my face? Or is my brain just filling it in, right?
I think your brain just filled it in, because I rewatched it like an hour or two ago, and I don't remember actually hearing any F-bombs.
What I remember, though, is like later when Tendy's telling her story, she's specifically omitting a bunch of stuff. And it seems like when people are cussing, they're also in the bleeps along with a lot of other things being bleeped. And that's what made me think, maybe it wasn't bleeped. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll have to talk about the bleeping specifically in Tendy's plot point here in a minute, because there's some really funny ways that they sort of played with the sound design in there. But yeah, they're essentially having this confrontation. Thank you, Home Chicky.
Chat saying it was bleeped.
Yeah, because I think the episode was rated PG, so I'm pretty sure they bleeped everything.
Okay.
But not well. What was it? Oh, so anyway, they're having this argument with the Clickets, is I looked it up, was the name of our bug aliens.
Okay.
And essentially Mariner thinks when Freeman is like, you send them a message, that means like fire a warning shot, which, I think is also a trope. And if we want to stay with our Wrath of Khan, sort of things, there is the point when Khan says like something devious, to the crew, like give it to them or explain it to them, and like sends a photon torpedo out. So if we're staying within the realm of Khan, that's like a possible reference there. I could be reaching a little bit.
Yeah, I was thinking right around that point, right when they start asking Boimler questions, I looked at the timestamp. I was like, okay, we're about 5 minutes and 50 seconds in. I think this all is a fake. I had it in my mind at this point in the episode that there was no trial, and all of this was a setup by the bridge crew
as like a training
simulation or something to get some sort of information out of them. So I was already like not very sure about the conceit overall. I was wrong, but maybe a little bit right. But it already just felt a little uneasy when they were brought up there, oblivious to what's going on, and the vague replies they're given are just kind of shrugged off by the bridge crew and like, go ahead and do whatever.
Hmm.
At that point, I was like, okay, they must be getting in trouble because they knew they weren't present. But I guess not.
Oh, yeah. That's an interesting way to think about it.
It was obviously not the case. That was just kind of what I was thinking. Mariner, while they're in the elevator going up, makes a
Hmm.
reference. She was talking about Earth, and she's like, "Oh, I don't want to be relegated to having to go to
Yes.
Earth. All they do is drink wine, hang out in vineyards, and soul food restaurants." And
Those
I was
are,
gonna ask you about
yes.
that.
Those are references, yes, to Picard and his wine drinking. And then the soul food is actually a Deep Space Nine reference because
Okay.
Captain Sisko's father ran a soul food restaurant.
Ah, the soul food one I wasn't sure, but I was like, okay,
Hmm.
I saw Picard, and all he does is sit on Earth at his vineyard all the time. So I was guessing that was what they were going for there.
Which is funny because I think timeline wise, I don't think Picard had left the Federation yet. Because we obviously haven't seen like the explosion of Romulus yet. And so like that timeline is anyway, he probably still had the vineyard, but I don't know if he's retired yet to like the full vineyard life. But
Right.
another fun fact for this episode is Star Trek. There's a Discovery cameo. Actor Kenneth Mitchell, who has played Klingons Kol, Kolsha, and Tavik, is the voice of the bug captain.
Ah.
And he also plays a Federation guard and a Romulan guard in this episode. So he got to play a couple of voice characters.
It seems pretty awesome that this show is bringing back a bunch of people that have been a part of the Star Trek family and allowing them to just kind of do these one-off voiceover characters here and there.
Yeah, I think it's a fun way to bring in. I'm hoping to either the rest of this season or maybe next we might get a couple of like some super fan cameos, especially now that I've been listening to the official Star Trek podcast, the Pod Directive. I don't know if you've checked it out yet, but it's pretty fun listening to celebrities just nerd out about how much they love Star Trek. And like Ben Stiller is a huge Star Trek fan and has like all this memorabilia. So I think it'd be fun, like a fun way to bring cameos in from like some big name actors who, maybe don't have the time to do like screen time, but can definitely record some cameos in their closet.
Right, right. So I think near the tail end of Mariner's recounting, we're getting the good sense of the theme of this particular episode, in that Starfleet, for all its greatness, is flawed as well. Starfleet has a compartmentalization of information, and as a result, some people on that ship can be completely in the dark about what is actually going on, like the people in lower decks. And that's kind of just the way of things, but it's also it also doesn't mean that their overall mission is bad or that they're flawed. And we'll get this more when Boimler gets a chance to kind of tie things in a bow. But it was already kind of apparent that they're trying to point out that there's a lot of lack of communication between upper decks and lower decks. There's a lot of confusion as to what are the ultimate goals, what's going on. And I think with Rutherford, we really get to explore that.
Yeah, and with Rutherford and Tendi too, I kind of think back to when we watched the original Lower Decks episode of TNG, because there was obviously that disconnect in communication when there is the like secret missions sort of happening and like everyone's
Right.
trying to figure out what's going on. And so I think this episode does a good job of sort of illustrating that in like a more comical way instead of a devastating way like we got on that original Lower Decks episode. But yeah, Rutherford's story, the chronic restarting after updates thing, I feel like is the bane of everyone's existence right now because we're all on computer screens all the time. And
We're
you're
we're
just like, oh,
we're all
Zoom has to update
traumatized,
again?
right? Yeah.
Great.
It's gonna happen halfway through our recording tonight. You know this now.
Absolutely. And like the Klingon fonts, it's like it's these little details that I think they just slide in that really add a lot of humor for me. The fact that at one point he's like, "Why do I need that?" And it's like Klingon fonts update.
Oh yeah. Right. But as this started jumping through the storyline, I got very confused because I think they started jumping between a bunch of different alien species.
Hmm.
Like the warbirds are Klingon, but they were taking them from a Romulan, or are
No,
they Romulan?
that was a Romulan ship that they were
Okay.
taking from a Vulcan museum.
Oh, okay. And
They
the,
needed to go into the Romulan neutral zone.
for something, they had a map. But
Hmm.
whatever they did, they rescued this dude at the end.
Yes.
Like, I was kind of thinking back to like what was going on with all the stuff that ultimately he ends at a Gorn wedding.
Oh my God, the Gorn wedding is so funny. I loved it so much.
The
And they're
best
just like
part,
gnawing on him. Like,
they're chewing him, and he's like, haha, suckers, because at this point he knows that he's about to go into God mode as soon as he reboots. But
hmm.
then he just wakes up and he's still in the same spot, still getting eaten. He's like, no.
And then we still don't even get to see like how he gets out of that situation
Yeah, there's
because
no
the guy is
resolution.
just like, "I'm out. Why are we at a Gorn wedding? I don't." And then I was like, "No, I need to know." Like, I saw someone just commented that like the Gorn wedding looked eerily similar to an Earth human wedding. Yes, that is very strange. And then like, so it made me want to know more about what was going on with this wedding.
What was that? We
They
need
there was a
another.
whole crash site behind it. They just see the ship go down and decide like, "Oh, we'll just go on with the wedding. It's okay. No
Right.
need to change venues or backdrops at all."
Yeah, we got this. We already were hinted at in a previous episode that Rutherford, when he activates his optical whatever device, he can go into super fight mode. I think he
Mhm.
does it with the security guard dude, the Bajoran. Is that
Jax,
correct?
yeah.
Jax. But it turns out that yeah, every time he reboots, he also can do the super fighting, and then Tendi can apparently also like fight like a maniac.
Yes, but
So
before we
everyone
get to
but Boimler can fight.
yeah. And I was like, before we jump into Tendi, though, there's like a couple of other like fun. I mean, I think
Oh,
Rutherford's was like probably some of the most uh reference deep like section of anybody's because we get the Gorn wedding, we get to go into the Vulcan, like there's the most alien species we see in his like sort of vignette, if you will. So we have uh the Vulcans that he does like the nerve pinch to, I guess, when he's like in reboot mode, so that they can uh he calls them Spock and Spock, which I thought was funny. Shax does. And then we have the Vulcan Museum, which had a ton of ship references. I tried to like catch them all, but there's
oh
like,
man, were you?
oh my gosh, there's so many. There was the original first contact Vulcan ship was in there. There's also one that looked a little bit like 2001 A Space Odyssey, but I'd have to double check. And I was like, why is that there? Um, anyway, there's a ton. There's all these little transporter ones. But yeah, so they steal the Romulan ship from there. But before that, he's trying to get the guard to stop paying attention, and he does the fan dance.
What is the fan dance?
So, if you don't remember from Undiscovered Country, when they land on that weird deserty planet, and Ahura has to do the fan dance so that they can get the horses.
Oh damn it! Now I do remember. Oh jeez. Oh yeah, we talked about that, the fan dance.
Yes, the fan
Yeah.
dance.
Um, I thought that part was so absurd, and I was like, they're really going into this. I wonder if this is a reference to something, and it's one that I should have gotten.
It
I
was
don't
right there. But yeah, I couldn't let us pass fan dance before we get to Tendi.
No, no, no. And this one, when we started seeing the flashbacks, um, I'm always a sucker for flashbacks. Shout out to Lost. I wish Clyde was here. I totally should say, hey, the best format to ever do a flashback, Clyde. Lost. But when we got the first one with Mariner, the alien very much emphasized the star date with the last number being 4. And then when he got to Rutherford, he said 1. And I was like, oh, this is a different point in time. So they're not all going to start at the same point in time. This is going to be a little bit of a jumbly puzzle of trying to patch together who's doing what where. Um, but yeah, and then when we jumped to Tendy's, her special assignment seemed so mundane at first. They've done this a couple times, but I love when she's presenting. She's like rubbing it in Mariner's face about like, I get to clean the conference room, and Mariner's like, who cares? Only for her to like turn the corner, and Mariner's like, man, I wish I got to do that.
Right. Like they each get that was like Tendy's tiny cold open. I thought it was like anyway, I just love that they each got sort of this weird smart thing right at the top to
Yeah.
sort of kick off their little moments.
Which makes me kind of wonder, do you think to an extent there's this is through the lens of them being the narrator? Like to
Right.
Tendy, Mariner would be grumbling after she left about, oh, I wish I actually
Oh.
got to go to the conference room. And so it's truth, but it's their truth from everyone's individual perspective.
That's true. That's an interesting thought process. I hadn't really thought of it that way, but I kind of like that. And the idea that Tendy loves it so much that even Mariner would be jealous of her assignment. Like,
But like real Mariner maybe wouldn't, but in Tendy's
right.
mind, she's totally jealous.
Totally jealous.
But the fact that she's also a cleaner, but doesn't realize she's that other kind of
The
cleaner,
cleaner.
is so good.
So good. Yeah. We see our secret body socks, secret mission body socks again are back for this one.
Right. And so Ransom and his bro squad,
Mhm.
they're
matching tattoos.
they roll in, they're super douchey, and it's kind of glorious. I like how they're just like, yeah, man, like high-fiving. And then all this weird stuff is like inconsistently bleeped out by
Yes.
Tandy as she's saying stuff, and like partial words are getting in there, and you're like, oh, okay. The joke is that she's also doing a lousy job of trying to be confidential about some of this stuff.
Yeah, like I like the bars over their eyes so that you don't know who they are. And then
Right. Is this part even necessary?
right, like can they see them? But and then the one I loved especially is when it would go Rom bleep Yulin, like
Right. Rom bleep Yulin Council.
that one was very funny. And then the scanning, oh my god, when they're like, you have to be quiet, they're scanning. Oh, they're scanning again. They're scanning again. That one, like I appreciated it how long that went. And I was like,
it takes that beat a few times too many.
oh man,
Like, oh, come on.
I'm here for it. And then yeah, the inside of the Romulan ship that they used was very like a TNG era Romulan ship. It reminded me a lot of this episode where which we covered on the Patreon actually, where Deanna Troi is like given plastic surgery to look like a Romulan so that she can go on a secret Romulan mission to work for these agents to get this person who's been captured back onto the Enterprise. Anyway, it felt very much like that plot line was like used into Tendy's plot line. It's called Face of the Enemy. If anyone wants to look that one up from TNG. Did I just say Voyager? I might have. I'm sorry. It is TNG.
Okay.
But yeah, so it's very reminiscent of that particular bridge. So I appreciated the multi-layered references there.
CJ Higgin pointed out, wasn't Mariner given a list of crappy jobs, but she also approached it with an awesome attitude, or where she was the only one that was, or she was doing it because she was ticked off with her mom, right? Yeah, she got like the worst jobs possible, but found a way to make them fun. Whereas like Boimler, whatever he was given, he was like overly enthusiastically efficient with everything. He's like, I just want to impress people, and she was just like, I'm gonna be defiant and have fun with awful things.
Yeah, I wish there had been like I understand it more. I think if this is like Tendy's recollection of it, but I think if it was Mariner's point of view, she'd have to be like, they always have the best snacks, like there'd have to be like something about the conference room that's like fun to clean up.
Right.
But yeah, we get to see Tendi kick some major butt and take down a bunch of armed Romulan guards, which was dope.
It was a really cool twist for the character because I mean, I guess they're kind of doing this with everyone. They're all really capable, right? But she's extremely smart and nerds out on all the tech stuff, and that's like her passion. But when it comes to her having to be relied on to help all those guys, um, she can go and kick butt, even when that's not actually what they want. They just want her to beam them out of there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I thought Tendies was super fun, and like a great way to pay homage to Face of the Enemy.
So when it came down to Boimler, what were you kind of expecting with his story?
I mean, I kind of like that he gives us the big Starfleety speech at the end, right?
Right.
Instead of him being an additional sort of character in this narrative. Like we saw him in Mariner's story, and so there obviously wasn't much else for him to contribute to this plot unless he was also selected for a secret mission, which he wasn't. And so I kind of love that in this particular episode, Rutherford and Tendi are the ones who get to go and be badasses, whereas Mariner and Boimler are just stuck on the bridge. And so, yeah.
Right. For us to rehash stuff from his perspective when he didn't necessarily know any more than Mariner, and more likely than not, given his who he is, he would know less. Yeah, it makes sense that instead he's the one who just pieces everything together and kind of puts the delivers the kind of explanation to the audience of here's actually what's going on with the problems of Starfleet in a way, and what we on Lower Decks want to explore this episode, which is that there is problems with communication. We've seen it from every single iteration of Trek. It seems that some people on Lower Decks don't get all the information, don't really know what's going on, and whether it's a feature or a flaw, it's not necessarily to the detriment of the overall lofty goals and aspirations of what is Starfleet.
Right. And he pointed out that even all of these like sort of legacy Starfleet members have all made mistakes. And so even though their bridge crew and their leadership team might not seem as impressive, he goes down the list of did Picard know about the Borgs, which is a reference to a TNG episode, Q Who. Shout out to I had to look up a lot of these. So Den of Geek had this one broken down for me because I was like, whew, this one's dense. I need some help. So Q forces the Enterprise to encounter the Borg. And Picard may not have known about the Borg in 2365. But anyway, Seven of Nine's parents knew about the Borg. So there's questions there about what Picard knew and what Picard shared with his crew. Did Kirk know about giant Spock on Phylos? This is actually from the animated series. There's a huge Spock clone, just named Spock number 2. Very creative.
Of course.
And then did Dr. Crusher know about the ghost in the lantern from the Scottish planet that she hooked up with that one time? Also from a TNG episode called Sub Rosa. And yeah, that's when Dr. Crusher has a good time with a ghost that lived in a lantern.
I heard this and I was like, oh yeah, that's gotta be one of those embarrassing episodes.
It's an interesting one. And then Drumhead, which is what he says at his mic drop moment, is another reference to Picard giving a speech that ends a witch hunt trial in the TNG episode, The Drumhead. And a drumhead itself refers to the actual head of a drum. And apparently on battlefields, it would serve as an ad hoc judge's bench. So there is the giant list of all of those references in Boimler's banana speech.
So he says this thing about Q popping in, and I haven't really seen this Q character. We had at the studio back when we used to all record at the studio together, we had Q Bear, which I thought was just I thought he was French. I didn't realize.
He speaks French in this episode too, which is funny.
But but he's basically the Great Gazoo, I guess. He's like a trickster
Yeah, he
who
just like
pops in to kind of out from in and out of time to just kind of mess with them.
I mean, yeah, that's an accurate description of Q, I think. That's a good one. And the original actor who played Q is the voice of Q in this episode. I'm trying to look up his name really quick. Um, but yeah, he was the
Someone mentioned it
original.
right up here,
Hmm.
but I was like,
John
I don't
Delancey.
know.
So John Delancey is
Ah,
the original Q, who also voices it in this episode. But yeah, I thought that was a fun reference at the end, kind of about how like nonsense happens and it doesn't always happen to every member of the crew, and not every member has to know everything that's happening. I loved the weird little game card world that they're kind of shot into, and then all of the uh like weird the way they took down Ransom with his like he doesn't even do research about his dates. It was like
oh right,
almost like a funny way to reference now people who don't like Google people before they go out on dates with them.
right.
Like
Um,
you didn't Google him?
is Salt Vampire a thing that's been in Trek that you're familiar with?
Yes, so it's from the original series. It's actually one of my favorite episodes. Uh and yeah, they like essentially lived on this planet, but they would like suck all the salt out of your body because that's what they needed to live.
Oh, jeez.
Anyway,
Okay.
it's fun. It's a good episode.
Yeah. Just kind of running through those, I thought all of these were like really funny, and like in a way I was like, I kind of want an episode where I want this ridiculous Q episode where they have to
Mhm.
have a chess game against cards with a talking soccer ball or whatever. Like you've seen, I've seen that story trope kind of repeated in all sorts of things. I remember like a famous X-Men episode where this guy Mojo brings all the best X-Men from across space and time to have to fight each other for a game or whatever. Like those kind of story devices happen all the time. I'm like, okay, if that's what they're going for here, those are always fun one-off episodes, and they showed me just enough of a glimpse. I'd be like, I, I like the world of Lower Decks that they've established to the point where I'm like, I'm on board if you guys want to do that silly shit too.
Let's go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I just love at the end, like I think one of my favorite moments of this episode is the very very end where the Lower Decks are confronting the bridge crew, and the bridge crew are like, "Oh, we should give you accommodation for being brave at this party that you thought was a trial, but way to uphold like Starfleet's honor in the best way possible." And then they just start going in being like, well, why did you have to go on this secret mission? Why was this guy captured by the Romulans in the first place? Why didn't you ask the Vulcans if you could just borrow this ship? And like,
why aren't you talking to us? Once again, it's like you guys missed the whole point of our complaint.
But it reminds me of the fact that like we do have these moments, we just have to kind of like forget to ask too many questions sometimes in Star Trek, and even in New Trek, because in Discovery, like I've been rewatching from the beginning, and I'm still very confused about the Ash Tyler Klingon situation, because we have seen in other Trek shows that they're able to like physically alter people to look like a different alien species without having to replace all the insides. And so it was anyway, it's just like one of those things where you're like, oh, this is still something that just happens. Like we just have to like forget about asking too many deep questions so that we can move forward with the plot.
Yeah, fair. I can't believe you brought up Ash Tyler again. Every time I go, Ash Tyler, you gotta remember that character. The part where he talks about, I don't know the cat doctor's name, but when the cat Tiana, when she's talking about, hey, there's a problem with doppelgangers, and then she ends up on this either a doppelganger ship or she's in the Mirrorverse because they're all either like gender bent characters or slightly different in this alternate reality.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a human form of her character.
Right.
They're on a ship called the Alhambra, and I was wondering, like, okay, the Alhambra versus Cerritos. I wonder if they're doing something kind of playful with that, but I didn't know what it might be. If you in the chat know,
yeah, so
let us know.
So Alhambra is like a place in Spain, and the Cerritos is a reference to, it's a California class ship. So I wonder if are there Spanish class ships or like what's the I also need to I'd have to go back and look at the closed captions if it's Alhambra or Alhambra, because Alhambra is in Spain and Alhambra is in Greece. So
Oh, well, look at you. All right. You know all this stuff.
European geography, baby.
I mean, overall, it was a fun episode. It was silly. They once they say, "What about dropping us in eels?" They get the broom out. They push them away.
No,
Like you
nothing.
said,
Beep, beep,
we're not
beep.
supposed to ask these deeper questions.
No.
Just enjoy the episode.
Yes.
I guess. Fair enough. Fair enough. Episode, if that's what you want us to do. Hey, this is a good point to go ahead and say, hey, chat. If you guys have a chance, you can go ahead and if you have any additional thoughts, go ahead and pepper them in on the side. I would like to point out that JC does say that Alhambra is a
Oh.
city in Southern California as well, so that kind of goes hand in hand with the Cerritos.
California class. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And Chippy says the difference with Ash is he fooled the medical devices, unlike the Klingon in Trouble with Tribbles. You got to go. There's no half measures, Mariah. You got to go whole hog. You have to have your entire
Go
body
crazy.
chemistry changed. That's they pulled a full Wolverine and sculpted everything from scratch.
Yeah, I saw a comment like very early on about from I think WYSIWYG about how last week we also got the sort of twist of the bad guy is actually the good guy, and then we sort of get it again this week, which I think is a fair question to pose of like, is that maybe they should have spaced these episodes out a little bit more, or but I do think it was, for me personally, it was different enough because it was more just like, oh, this is this big cultural misunderstanding rather than this is just one particular person who sounds evil and has an evil laugh and too dark of a ship, and in the end was totally fine. But yeah, I can definitely see how the twists are pretty similar.
Right. Yeah, I'm getting the sense from this show that it's really trying to stay away from classic villains and evilness. It's trying to be lighthearted, playful, and if ever there is a quote unquote villain in this show, I think they're generally trying to show that it's oftentimes just kind of a misunderstanding of both sides, and you can at least try to come to a little bit of a consensus, which is a lot more diplomatic than I think some of the other shows go, where it's like mustache twirling evil bad guy right there.
Right. Very true.
Let's see. Home Chicky says, once we are COVID free, let's do a live meetup in New Orleans. Find a Cisco restaurant for pretend.
Ooh.
A little soul food.
I'm into this idea.
We have a Cisco's here in Austin, but that's Tex-Mex.
Yes.
It's a different.
We could just do both.
Just come over here, guys.
We could go to. Have you ever been
Tex-Mex.
in Austin? I think one of my favorite places for, I mean, at least all things fried soul food is Mr. Catfish. Highly recommend if you are.
I've heard of it and I haven't been.
It's good as long as you're okay with everything being the same color of fried.
Can
it's
I
like
get a plate of orange, please?
yes.
That's all they're gonna give me. Okay, fair. Let's see. Here's another one. Chris Rogers says, "Pod, I feel like Boimler's speech was him more readily embracing the reality that upper decks aren't as great as he usually sees them to be, while still acknowledging his love of Starfleet." It's a good point.
Of Starfleet. You froze out on my end. I don't know if you did for everybody else.
You froze out on my end.
Oh, no. Okay.
Look at that.
Anyway, yeah, I like this as like sort of a lesson of the episode as well, because I think, it's it almost speaks to the times of like you can't ever really totally love your heroes and not know that they're still going to be complicated, not perfect people, right? Like
Right.
there's lots of creators right now who for better or for worse have made mistakes in their life in choices they've made, pictures they've posted, articles they've written, tweets they've sent out, whatever it needs to be. And you hope that they realize and learn from that and move forward, which I think to me is the lesson of this episode of like, yes, everyone makes mistakes, but as long as you are moving towards a better future and being a better person, then they can, there's ways to work around that, right?
Your heroes are flawed, except if your heroes are us. Mariah and I have no flaws, so do not go looking. Stop it. Cut it
I
out.
was like, do you not have your Twitter set to delete every 90 days? Whatever's
Oh,
older than
no.
that.
Oh, no. Nope.
You should do that.
People are just going to be like, oh, shit. you say awful things all the time.
Oh,
Like,
no.
context matters. It was funny. No.
Oh,
Never
JC
funny.
just brought up that we should buy black bodysuits for our next cosplay show.
Oh, yeah,
Also,
we all have Sentai.
I'm into it. Also, if people don't know, Star Trek is doing a cosplay contest right now. You can enter, and if you win, you get to go to the digital premiere of season 3 of Discovery. So if you are into cosplay, definitely check that out. They tweeted it out from the official account. I'm slowly trying to figure out if I have enough wardrobe pieces to cosplay as Tilly from the new promo images, because I don't have a uniform, but I'm like, I have black jackets and scarves and things. I could figure this out. Because you might as well try.
Here's a question from Choopy, which is, what was your favorite line from the show? And the first one that comes to mind for me is the one we already kind of addressed, but when Tendy's talking about how excited she is to get to be cleaning the conference room, and once she turns the corner, Mariner goes, oh man, I wish I was cleaning the conference room. I think that was just the funniest part for me. Did you have a particular line?
Oh man, it'd be hard to say like right off the top of my head now. I know I really loved Tendy's moment when they're like, all right, do your thing, cleaner. And she's like, my thing? What's my thing? And it's just like that shock and horror of like, oh no, I need to do something and I have no idea what it's supposed to be. Anyway, right. I like that.
JC says, when Tendy said sorry to the Romulans after knocking them out, and the guy said something like, whoa, you're playing some crazy bleeping mind games, cleaner. Which PW Gregory says, Ransom's, that's some cold bleep.
Yeah, all the bleep outs were great. I also just think the Rutherford computer saying the Klingon font updates was maybe one of my favorite parts of this whole episode.
What do I even need that for? Yeah, this was a lot of fun this episode. I'm disappointed to say, Mariah, that we had a secret agenda at the start of this episode to try and wrap it up within 22 minutes, and we've clearly overshot that.
We failed miserably. Kick us out of the room. Get rid of the etching stone.
Party's over, guys.
Party is
over.
But I was going to ask you, Grant, if you still wanted to play the game I suggested prior to coming on air.
Yes, I do.
Okay. So this is a game my spouse and I often play. I will give him full credit. He came up with this, and it is the how many beers test. So you think of a character from like a show you like, or a movie, or even an actor. We like to do it with dart players because that's the sport that we watch in our household. And so the rules are you have to come up with how many beers you would have with this particular person. So is it like you're just getting a sample and you're leaving the bar? Is it you're going to have the full pint? Is it you're getting the sampler platter? Or that's not what they're called, a flight, not a sampler platter. A flight, a pitcher, or the full keg. And so I thought it would be fun for us to discuss whether or not or how many beers we would have with our core crew of Boimler, Mariner, Tendy, and Rutherford.
Okay. So a flight, a beer, a flight, or a pitcher. Is that the three?
Or a keg, if you want to really go for it.
I'm gonna die. Yeah. Okay. Who are we gonna start with?
Well, I think we'll start with Tendy. I think we'll go in like kind of reverse order of those we know the least to most about.
Okay, Tendy. I would probably do a pitcher.
I agree with that.
I think a pitcher's good. I think she'd have pretty lively conversation. She would be maybe a little bit intense.
Right. Like maybe the pitcher would help bring her down just like a minute, you know?
Right. But It wouldn't. I don't know if I could go the distance of a full keg, a full night of like wherever that conversation may go.
Yeah, yeah. It
Maybe
would
like
probably get too nerdy
eyes glazing over and be like, I can't hold my own here. With a pitcher, I can always at least just chug it if I need.
if you got to go for it. Yeah. What about Rutherford?
Oh, I mean, he might be kind of in the same camp. I feel like with Rutherford, I might prefer the flight only because I think then, um,
Some things to talk about.
right, if it's with him, we can always just jump back to talking about the individual beers we're tasting, and that's like a safe space for me. If if the conversation does open up beyond that, I can just drink and go along. But I would go with a flight for him.
I might go flight then pitcher because I think it would be fun to do the flight to figure out what we'd want to drink together and then go in for the pitcher because I feel like, you know, he would have opinions about it,
Pitcher optional.
Yeah, yeah,
I like
totally.
That. Okay.
And Boimler?
Man, I mean, if I'm being honest, Boimler seems like a kindred spirit where I could do a couple pitchers. I don't think I could go full keg with him because maybe it's a little bit too kindred. But I'll say a couple pitchers.
I might be like at least start with one, and then I'd have to see, one pitcher, and then see where it goes from there.
Mariner.
I'm going kegger with Mariner. That would be fun. If anything, to see her do a keg stand at least.
I'm waking up in a bathtub missing a kidney, but it's totally worth it. Yeah, I think when you have her personality, yeah, you wanna hang out, just kind of glom onto that and be like, where is this gonna take us?
Yeah, yeah. I think the night would be young, and then it would be terrible, and then it would be young again, and it would be like a roller coaster of the night.
Yeah, I'd be crying, and then
Yes.
I'd be crying some more, and then just a lot of crying. I cry too much if I
Oh,
if I drink
dang.
a whole keg.
So sad. No one wants a salty beer.
It's my only emotional outlet. That's awful. That's awful.
Oh no! And on that note,
it's time for us to have. We need more therapy in track. I think that's what we always talk about.
yes.
Yeah, I think we will have to go ahead and wrap things up here. Wait, we do have a comment here. Chris Rogers says Tendy a pitcher, Rutherford a beer, Boimler a beer, Mariner a keg, and some shots. Okay.
There we go, Chris. You got it.
Same page ish. Pretty much same page. All right. Folks, we want to say thank you so much for joining us on the pod this week. And remember, you can always find us live on YouTube every Thursday talking about Trek. And of course, we'll be covering Lower Decks every single week. We only have, is it 10 episodes this season?
Yeah. So we just have 2 more weeks, and then it's 3 weeks till disco, baby.
Oh my gosh. Next week's the penultimate. I wonder if they're going to do something crazy. Anyway, we're going to be covering Discovery, season 3 in just 3 weeks. So if you guys are holding out on watching us live, I hope you join us for Star Trek Discovery once that comes back, because I think these Thursday nights, they're becoming an event. I mean, all of us, except for, Mike and Clyde, are just chomping at the bit to be on these episodes.
Yeah.
Where are those
and
guys?
Grant, it's been nice sharing a beer with you this evening. Mine's a cider, but that's doesn't matter. But yes, if you have enjoyed listening to Grant and I this evening, and you hope that Mike and Clyde are back next week, you can subscribe, rate, and review us on Apple. Please do that. Leave us a review, 5 stars, please, and thank you. And visit StarTrekPod.co to get all the links to everything this podcast, as well as links to our Patreon, where you can join us for $2 an episode pledge, get access to our amazing Slack full of the best humans on this planet. And you want to hang out with the best humans, like I said at the top of the episode. The watch-alongs are super fun. We're also starting to talk about the representation of women in Trek in a really fun Slack channel we've got going right now, specifically talking about how these latest 2 shows are front-running by women, which is super awesome and amazing. And I love chatting with everyone in that room. And yeah, you can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Star Trek Pod on both of those places. Shout outs to Karen and James Worm who help us run our social media. You all are the best of the best.
Once again, thank you for joining us on Star Trek Discovery Pod. Mariah, where can people find you?
Oh, I'm at Mariah Gossett on all platforms. That's Mariah with a Y and a Gossett with 2 S's and 2 T's.
And I am at Baron Von Grant. Follow at your own peril. Thank you guys so much for checking out our show. We'll be back next week to cover the penultimate of Lower Deck Season 1. Until then, live long and prosper.
Bye.
Later, deuces.